Hi, everyone. It's Steve Politi from NJ Advanced Media. This week's Rutgers Rant is brought to you by the New Brunswick Development Corporation. A big thank you to our sponsor and to all of our listeners for the continued support. Now let's get to the show.
From NJ.com and the Star Ledger, welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights. With your host, Steve Politi, and Rutgers insiders Keith Sargent and James Cratch. Let's start shopping.
Hello, everybody. Steve Politi here from NJ Advanced Media. Welcome back to the Rutgers Rant. Joined James Cratch, Keith Sargent. Fellas, this is the first podcast that is previewing a NCAA tournament team in Rutgers history, right? Oh, sorry. Did you have a podcast in 1991?
I did.
What was it called back then?
I think it was the Are You Screw podcast. I think we had the name beforehand.
Right.
I think that was.
Did you have to call like a 976 number to get them? How would you deliver this to the readers in 1990, to the viewers in 1991?
I just called
out
up
your window.
Yeah, I just called up each fan individually. So
Bob Wenzel, special guest on the Keith Sargent 1991 podcast. All right, but no, this is a huge couple weeks coming up in Rutgers sports history. You really can't oversell it. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't start with what has to be, one of the signature victories in just a long time for the basketball program. And you're watching this game. They're up, big double digits in the second half. Minnesota starts rallying. I don't know how you guys were feeling about it, but you got to the moment where you're thinking, if they lose this game, when that thought gets in your head, when that game is tied and it looks like Minnesota is going to steal this thing. I mean, Cratch, I don't know how the basketball program recovers from that loss if that happens.
They don't. I mean, they just don't. Right. Look, I did not watch the game as closely as you guys. I had it on my iPad. I was at the Big Ten wrestling tournament, which we'll talk about later. But no, I mean, they don't recover like that. It's as simple as that. Like, yes, they would have, in theory, gone into the Big Ten tournament with one more win and get in. But let's be real, they don't recover from that.
Right.
And I think that's why this was so critical for them to get it. Because at this point, I know fans don't want to hear it or think about it. It's all gravy at this point. They're in. They're going to hear their name called on Selection Sunday.
Right.
They're going to be in the dance. As long as, nothing happens COVID-related, like, they're going to play the game. And this is all over now. It's all off their back. They can move on now.
And they have to thank for that, Sarge, obviously, just an epic performance by Jacob Young. I wrote about the steal he made at the end of regulation when that was a layup and a victory for Minnesota if he doesn't get that ball. But not just that, but just the way he controlled the offense. He scored the first basket in overtime, assisted on the next two. And he was just, I don't think – a guy who knows, Ron Garuti, and I'm sure he's a listener, guy who's seen a lot of Rutgers athletics, a lot of Rutgers sports team. He texted me and said he can't remember a single individual performance better than that. He goes more clutch than that. And he goes back to obviously the days of Valvano and Young. I mean, what can you say about just the way he played, Sarge?
Tremendous. I mean, well, first off, if Rutgers fans ever wanted to Oprah our text messages, it was.
You think our tweets are bad? You should see our text chain.
Oh my God, we're rewriting them off. It was like a train wreck, a slow moving train wreck. As Minnesota's rallying, down the stretch, and just my God, there's a great screen grab of how Minnesota basically had two guys breaking free, and if Jacob Young doesn't close the gap and get that ball, steal that ball, that's a layup. And the game's over, and we're talking about the most devastating loss in Rutgers history. So just an unbelievable performance. He just was a calm, steadying presence. Credit to Steve Peichel for riding him, and putting the ball in his hands in overtime. That was, he sensed, that this is a game that you need Jacob Young to step up and win.
All right, and that gets us to the point now where maybe they can go in the Big Ten tournament. There's no pressure on them now. They're in. They know they're in the field. I don't know. Everyone seems to think they got a break. When Penn State upset Maryland last night, they will play Indiana as the number 7 seed, Indiana team that obviously is not going to make the tournament. It's been playing poorly, a team they've beaten twice already. what do you think, Cratch? Is this the matchup they most likely would have wanted?
I guess so. I mean, look, I don't think you want to play Michigan State, but again, I don't think it really matters. Like the one negative is that beating Indiana a third time, even if they do it, is probably not going to do a tremendous amount of good for their seeding. And honestly, I'm from the school of thought that now that you're in the tournament, who cares about this game? In fact, it might be advantageous to Rutgers to you never want to play to lose, but to not win this game and just get back to the hotel, get in the bubble, stay safe, and get ready for the tournament.
I mean, well, first off, we care, Politi and I, because if they lose on Thursday and we have to fly back on Friday, that takes away another meal on the road that Politi and I would have on Friday. I mean, excellent. What was Cratch talking about? I just
don't know. He doesn't think about the shrimp cocktail. That's what he's not. His eyes not on the prize.
Well,
Indianapolis. My first meal out since last year in Indianapolis. By the way, it's the last time I ate at a restaurant.
You guys are going to see each other.
We're going to see each other.
We will.
It's amazing. It's just going to be. I'm going to hug. I'm going to put my mask on and give you a big fat hug, Sarge. That's how I feel. Right. That's how I feel about it. But I mean, so I tweeted this. This is a good piece of trivia for you, Sarge. All right.
Sure.
So I tweeted it that it's hard to beat a team 3 times in the season. Several of my Twitter followers replied with evidence that it is not, that actually the team that won the first 2 wins the third game 70% of the time. By my best research, Rutgers has only done this, beating a team 3 times in a season, once in the last 31 years. I'm sure you covered it. Can you tell me what it was?
Wow. No, off the top of my head, I can't.
Not ancient history. I'll give you the season, 2013-14.
2013-14.
This would have been the Big East as it was crumbling.
The American
AAC,
Athletic Conference.
Yeah, AAC, whatever it was called then.
I don't know.
Have a guess.
You got a guess? Give it to me, Cratch.
South Florida.
Yes, it was South Florida.
Oh, wow. That's a good call.
Florida 3 times that year. I don't know how many wins they had.
I just want to make clear, I did not cheat on that. I literally was like, okay, it's 13-14 AAC. What's the crappiest basketball team? It was probably in that league at that point. Was
Florida. Was Matt Grothe playing for South Florida? Was Jim Levitt the coach? Or no, that's football, by the way.
That's football. Right. All right. So there you go. There's the trivia. So it hasn't happened a lot, but certainly you would think that they are capable of doing it this time. And if they do it, well, then they get Illinois, and I'm not sure that that's a better thing than playing Michigan. Certainly Illinois looks like they're the hottest team in the league. They've already beaten them once. But you're right, Cratch. You make a great point about this. It is all gravy. I don't think, and this is the next thing we'll talk about here, I don't think they can do a lot to improve their seeding. Am I wrong by that, Sarge? I mean, if they win, I guess if they beat Indiana, beat Illinois, maybe you're talking about a 7 seed, but it seems like right now, based on all the projections, they're sort of entrenched in the 8-9 area.
Yeah, I think so. Look, I mean, if they win, winning a game is never a bad thing. And I sometimes look at these bracketologists, and I know they're pretty good at what they do, but sometimes I think once it gets down to the nitty gritty, I think this selection committee has a way of defying all of that logic that everyone else does leading into it. It's kind of like all these NFL mock drafts, and all of that goes out the window like 5 minutes into the NFL draft, right?
Right.
So.
Absolutely.
I think winning a game is never a bad thing. I disagree with Cratch. I can understand where if you're a team like Michigan, maybe it doesn't really matter. They probably already have a number 1 seed for the NCAA tournament. Illinois, perhaps as well. But for a team like Rutgers, just get some more momentum and build off the Minnesota win.
Yeah, and then a lot of talk about the 8-9 line. I was looking at today. Gonzaga hasn't lost a game by double digits since December. By less than double digits. Sorry, hasn't lost a game at all. Of course, have won every game by double digits or more since December. They're an incredible team. Baylor a level below, but still, those are obviously the 2 best teams in the country. There's something about that though. I guess if you're an 8-9 and you win that first game. Take your shot early, right? There's a history of number 1 seeds going down before the Sweet 16. You can certainly make a list of some of the bigger upsets in college basketball history. We're in that game. Cratch, why not, right? Catch them before they get their feet down in this tournament.
No, I think there's a logic to that. I mean, look, I would not want to play Gonzaga. Baylor's a very good team, obviously, but the thing about Baylor is, and people, there's been a lot of talk about this because obviously we don't know what's going to happen in Indiana. Scott Drew is a guy, Indiana guy whose name has kind of come up tied to the Hoosiers if they make a move. They don't necessarily have like incredible talent on that team. They're just a really good college basketball team. So maybe you're not as afraid of Baylor as, you should be, or people would think you are. But no, I mean, I've always said, like, I think the best seed for this team would be like in the 7-10 game because they would get a 2 seed in the first round, and that would be a more manageable matchup. But again, yeah, I mean, like, if you can be in the 8-9 game, I think that is something that you take. I mean, you take any seed at this point.
Of course. But
I don't think that there's a concern of, if they lose Indiana, they slip to 11. Like, even then, I'd be like, that's fine.
Right. And if you're right. If they're in the 7-10 as a 10, well, it's still the toss-up game of the first game, and maybe that's a better situation for them. They would play an Alabama, or what are the 2 seeds now? It's a team along those levels. It certainly is not as dominant, but still, obviously a difficult matchup in the second round.
And let's just take a pause real quick. We are actually talking about Rutgers seeding. It is amazing. It really is. As someone who's covered this for 20 years, you've been covering just as long, Politi. It's just an amazing, Rutgers fans should be rejoicing as they are. I mean, but this is just, we're actually talking about this as just a fact that it's not even a question that they're in the NCAA tournament. Yeah.
And coming from the background that, I would from North Carolina, working down there, just how much fun it is professionally to cover it. I mean, when I came back up here in 1998, I lost that in the Final Fours for us. But it's a different thing when you've got a horse in the race than it is when you're just a guy dropping in and you're covering whoever wins or loses. And the closest I came, Princeton we covered a few times. I've covered FDU. I've covered Monmouth for us in the NCAA tournament. Went to Dayton with Monmouth in the play, the first 4. But it's Seton Hall, of course, a couple of times. But this will be the first time for Rutgers, so it's going to be a lot of fun, guys. I'm looking forward to it. All right, let's do some true false. You ready?
Ready?
True or false? You know the rules, obviously. Here we go. True or false? The key to a successful March run for Rutgers, making 3-pointers. Cratch, true or false?
True.
Sarge, true or false?
True. Yeah, true.
All right. True or false? The key to a successful March for Rutgers, improving the rebounding margin. Bratch, true or false?
False.
False. Sarge?
Are we talking one key, the top key? Or, I mean, I think that's probably true as well.
It's probably true as well. Yeah, we can do either way. It's definitely true.
Yeah.
All right. Here's my final one on this, since I like to do things in threes. True or false? The key to a successful March for Rutgers, Ron Harper finding his game. Cratch, true or false?
Since we're doing more than one key, true.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Sarge? Yeah, I think they need some element of all those, and we'll talk more about just what has to happen to get this team back in the right way. All right, true or false? Forget the Big Ten tournament. Rutgers should mail it in and sequester. Cratch, this was your idea. True or false?
True.
Oh man, that's such a bad take. That's such a.
It is a bad take.
That's a tough take.
Why wouldn't they? If they won the Big Ten tournament, it would be the greatest accomplishment in Rutgers basketball history since the Final Four. I mean, if that would be.
I understand that, but
take a banner.
Right.
Yes, actually, it's. I mean, it would be a banner, but Rutgers have to make the banner because I think Graham Couch from the Lansing Journal always says that the regular season champion is the champion of the Big Ten identifies.
No. Right.
Recognizes. No, here's my thing. I just feel like I said it. I think the last podcast. These conference tournaments just feel like an unnecessary risk in the age of COVID-19.
That's true.
So. Go out there, I'm not, I mean, obviously I'm not saying, you completely tank it, but go out there, if you lose the game, great, try some things, mix and match, and then go to the hotel and just stay safe and practice, Like if I were Rutgers, I'd be, okay, we'll, play the first round game, lose it, do what we got to do for the TV money, because that's really what this is all about. And then, like, I don't know, find like a courtyard somewhere, an hour out of the city, right, to buy the whole thing out and just turn it into it'd be fun. It'd be like Rocky IV, just like let's go out there in the middle of nowhere and just prepare for this big fight coming up.
Sounds like fun. Historically bad take by
this is really like the worst. It keeps getting worse. Now we're leaving Indianapolis.
And he's trying to go
to Gary, Indiana, some courtyard. And this is like just keep on, just gets all right. Now this is memorable. It's great. Wow. All right. Let's keep going because we'll spend more time on that one. All right. True or false? The Big Ten tournament will have a surprise winner. It won't be Michigan or Illinois. Cratch. True or false?
True.
All right. Find out who you think it's going to be. Sarge. True or false?
False.
False.
Michigan.
I think it's going to be Illinois. Cratch. Who do you think it's going to be?
Michigan State. It's March. It's Tom Izzo.
Wow. Come on.
Whoa.
Oh my gosh. This is too bad.
I'm telling you, like,
I know. Michigan again? They're going to be Michigan again 3 days after they, like, come on.
Yeah, why not? No, like, as I said, like, the minute Fonseca said they stunk, and then I was like, oh, we'll see. Like, yeah, like, ever since they
Fonseca
beat
hasn't been allowed back on the pod since he said.
Ever since they beat Rutgers that first time, like, you know what? We're going to be sitting here on the pod in March in the Sweet 16, and they're going to be in the Sweet 16. This is what Tom Izzo does.
True or false? C. Vivian Stringer should be the Big Ten's Coach of the Year of women's basketball. Cratch.
True.
True.
100%. True. I think it's absolutely. Yeah. Who's the next top candidate?
Oh, Brenda Fries from Maryland. Okay. They won it 6 of the last 7 years, and they won it again. They were picked to finish second. Indiana was picked to finish first. Rutgers was not picked. I know true and false were only supposed to, but I'm going to deviate a little bit
here.
Yeah. So Rutgers was nowhere to be found in the Big Ten preseason poll. Yeah, they do a top 5 ranking. Rutgers was not. They received one measly vote in the AP top 25. They won 9 in a row now. Finished third in the standings, top 3 seed. They're probably in line. If you look at the NCAA net ranking, they're ranked 11th in there. They're probably in line for either 3 or 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, which would be the highest seed since they've had since 2008. And really, when you look at the makeup of the roster, they have 7 freshmen on the team, right? And they've really gotten better. They had a 34-day COVID pause. Let's not forget that. They haven't lost a game since they came back. You can make a case that this is, her best coaching job since the Final Four run back in 2007. So just really a remarkable job. She should be the Big Ten Coach of the Year. Normally it goes to the champion, so Brenda Fries will likely get it. But if you're a women's basketball voter, which from a all Big Ten team, I did vote for her. But if you're a follower and you've been following it and you have your finger on the pulse, I mean, she's the Coach of the Year.
All right, true or false? Rutgers will have 3 All-Americans in wrestling. Cratch, you're the only one possibly educated enough to answer this. True or false?
True. I mean, Mike Van Brill, John Poznanski, Sebastian Rivera all looked like All-American, type wrestlers this weekend at the Big Ten title tournament. All took third. So yeah, I think they will do it, and it'll be historic. They never had 3, and I think this team was there's a lot of doubters about the success of the team. Obviously didn't win a dual meet, had the long COVID pause. They really had a good tournament as a team out there in State College this weekend. I think there's a lot of optimism now going into nationals. All
right, and finally, true or false? I will find a way to eat at St. Elmo's at least 3 times this month. Cratch, true or false?
True.
Sarge?
It's 100% true.
Now, you know what? This is I threw a little curveball at you. I'm going to go false here, only because, again, I have not physically eaten in a restaurant in a year. I'm gonna have to get a different. Indianapolis is a good restaurant town. I'm gonna want to. We're there for several days. I'm gonna want to get some other meals too.
Does COVID just not exist in Indiana?
Apparently not. No, I've been reading up. I think it's A-okay there. Yeah, that's what I've seen. Open for business. 8,000 tickets sold. Restaurants seem to be open. Yeah.
God.
Good news. Right. I'm sure my wife will understand that I just, there's no COVID in the end, honey. Good news. All right. I think we want to talk about there. I mean, the keys to this team, and I think that's, we maybe just do a little nerdy basketball here, which Fonseca was on. I will say, it is the thing that reminds you when this team rebounds well and plays defense well, it'll be in every game. And the times that they have not done that have been the times when you start, all right, well, I think Minnesota got back into that game on a lot of reasons because it was rebounding better than Rutgers, and making threes as well. Fonseca had a good chart about just how that the 3-point shooting percentage has dropped significantly. I guess it's not a surprise because we didn't think they'd be a good 3-point shooting team. But you've got to be able to make big basket. And when they got that big lead against Minnesota, Geo Baker was pulling up from the corner. I think he needs to shoot more. I think the team's better when he's got the ball in his hands and he's trying to score. Didn't do enough of it in the second half. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. We probably left one out. I mean, the defensive, what they did against Minnesota, especially in the first half, was absolutely incredible. That's going to be a key, as always with Rutgers. But 3-pointers are it's going to be the name of the game for this team, and getting to the free throw line and making their free throws, because they are an awful free throw shooting team. They don't get to the line enough, and they allow too many free throws. So, winning that battle, at the in the box score, at the end of every game is going to be key as well.
All right, guys, I think we've covered everything else. Let's dive into some Rutgers Insider questions. Hey, Rutgers Rant listeners, it's Steve Politi from NJ Advanced Media. We appreciate you supporting this podcast and the sponsors who help us continue doing it. This week's podcast is brought to you by the New Brunswick Development Corporation. If you listen to this show, you love Rutgers. And if you love Rutgers, you know the positive impact that DevCo has made on the campus and its community. We thank the New Brunswick Development Corporation for its continued support and for helping make this podcast possible. Now back to the show, shall we? As always, NJ.com/insider. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for talking to us, chatting with us, interacting. And as always, thanks for your questions. We got a bunch of good ones here. This is my favorite one. I want to know what each of you were doing in 1991 when Rutgers last made the tournament. I was pledging my fraternity at Rutgers, and some of the brothers were going down to the game and asked me if I wanted to go. I told them no because I suspected they were going to leave me somewhere to find my way home from Georgia. To which they responded, yeah, you're probably right. We'll totally do that to you. So I watched the game from a fraternity house on spring break. Good stuff. I love it. Where were you, Sarge? Do you remember where you were in 1991?
I was a freshman in high school.
Were you really?
I was.
God, you're that much younger than me. What were you doing there?
Baseball?
What was
probably
in high school? So
yeah.
you played baseball?
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably. I don't remember what I was doing. I did a story, a few years ago, and I remember this was pre, you have a watch party and all the other stuff. And Mark Peterson, who was on that team, he went to he was at a Wendy's on campus when the show, it was so, just, okay, well, just let us know who we're playing. And,
That's funny. Yeah. Right. Because they just made it 2 years earlier.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, it wasn't that big of a deal. Crash, what were you doing in 1991?
I was 16 months old.
Okay. So you don't remember.
No, I cannot give you many fond memories of the Scarlet Knights run to the big dance in 1991.
There you go. Yeah, I was a freshman in college. That was great. I'd tell you, 1991 was a good year. That was fun. That was a good time. Carolina made the Final Four. It was my first exposure to big-time college basketball.
Did you cover it?
Kansas. No, I was not yet. I covered the year 3 years later before they won the national championship in 1993, and I covered 94 for the newspaper when they lost in the second round.
What was the year that they beat Michigan? What was the year?
93.
93. That's what I thought.
Timeout, the Chris Webber timeout, and the next year when they had almost that entire team back, Rasheed Wallace and Jerry Stackhouse lost to a number 9 seeded Boston College in the second round, which is why when you think about the 8-9 game, it is not impossible to not advance there. It was one of the biggest upsets at the time. So there you go. Good question. Thank you for that one. All right, let's dive into another one about 1991. How likely are the last 2 years the beginning of something rather than the end? I was at Rutgers when Wenzel came in. We felt like now in 91, which I guess his way of saying is that was the end of something, right? That team did not go anywhere. The program fell apart. Wenzel was fired, I think, 4 or 5 years later. What do you think, Sarge? Is this more likely to begin the start of something, or is this, a window kind of will close here when this team is done?
Oh, the start. Yeah, absolutely, to start something. When we've talked about this, I think last week, when you talk about the resources that are in place with this program, and absolutely, this is a program that's on the rise. Regardless of what happens with the roster defections, that we'll probably, talk, when the smoke clears on the season. But is never going to be easy for this program. Will they ever get to a point where they're perennial top 2-3 teams in the Big Ten? Maybe not, but I don't know who is at this point, because Illinois, and Michigan are having nice little runs here, but Illinois, they're not too long ago they were in the bottom 3 of the Big Ten. So I think this is a program that will have an opportunity now, and this will be a launching point for the program.
Crash, do you agree? And the point I will make to start as a counter, I don't know if they're recruiting at a level yet where they will be a tournament team every year, right? This is a unique group. What do you think, Crash? Where do you fall on?
I don't think they're going to be a tournament team every year. I think that it's the start of something in a sense that I feel like they're on a pretty good, kind of cycle now where, I believe this is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is, year 5 for Peichel. He's made the tournament, if you want to count last year, 2 times. So, maybe you kind of go back to the start of the cycle and over the next season or 2 seasons, but then you're at the point where you've got, if you're Rutgers and you can say every 5 years we're going to go to the big dance 2 to 3 times, I think that's pretty good, and that's about where Rutgers realistically should be at this point in time. And obviously, if the recruiting picks up, then maybe you can get more.
All right, another 1991 question. This is fun stuff. All right, which team would you like better, the current team or the 1991 team? Just got to go back and look at that 1991 team. Sarge, can you tell me the leading scorer?
Oh, God, I cannot.
Keith Hughes.
I cover Keith Hughes, too, and he passed the late
rebounds.
Keith Hughes from Carteret. Yes.
Bad job.
Yep. Bad job by me. Bad job by me.
15
yep.
15 points. A guard, center, Brent Dabbs, 6'10", 13 points. So, I mean, Craig Carter, former assistant, obviously, Tom Savage. It's got some team. I mean, based on strictly nothing else except the conference they had to play in, I would think I would take the current team. I mean, the Big Ten of this era was certainly better than the Atlantic 10 back then. What do you think, Sarge?
It was Craig Carter, by the way, who was at the Wendy's, not Mark Peterson. I don't know why I said that.
Okay.
It's just, I just had a moment, senior moment, I think.
It happens.
No, I think, God, I'd have to really break down and study. Like I said, I was in high school at the time. The 91 team was in the NCAA tournament. My gut tells me that this team might be a little bit more proficient and ready to make a run and win a game in the NCAA tournament, just based on experience. And I know they're Heckle and Jide. I get it.
Yeah.
I completely get it. And, if the ball, Jacob Young doesn't set up in that pass, we're having a totally different conversation.
Oh, boy, are we ever. Yeah.
Completely get it. I just kind of feel, and I credit Aaron Brightman for kind of asking the question, post game the other day. I kind of feel like we might see a different team now that the weight has been lifted. They're done answering the NCAA question. They're in now. I think they're going to be able to play more free. I think we're just going to see a different team. I could be wrong. Again, this team is very tough to figure out, but I kind of think that this team might be a little bit more poised to win a game or 2 in the NCAA tournament.
Now, I know you were watching, even though you're 16 months old. I can see you sitting in front of the radio as Francesa was talking about it in your formative years. Can you picture this, Sarge? You've got like a diapered Cratch sitting there next to like a transistor radio as Dog and Francesa argued about the 91 Rutgers team.
It's kind of closer to reality than you think, but anyway.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. That's why I know exactly. Yeah, I believe it. Sure.
Yeah, look, I agree with what Sarge said. I think there's a chance this team kind of plays freer. I think the one thing that I definitely think Gio seems to realize is that this is how, like, a lot of these guys, we think there's going to be changes with this team. This is the last time this team, this group is going to be together, and this is what they're going to be remembered on.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that probably impacts them too. That now, like, it's all over. Like, this is about the legacy now and what people are going to remember about this team. So, I feel like, it's kind of weird. Like, I'm going to really up the class of this podcast here. That Langston Hughes poem, "Dream Deferred." Like, I was thinking about, like, that kind of describes this team. that last year, like they've been on this 2-year journey to kind of realize their dream, and it could have blown up on them, and it almost did. If Jacob Young doesn't pick off that pass, it probably does blow up on them. But they kind of survived that, and now they can kind of take off with a fresh start and play free and see what they can do.
Good job by you. Good job by you, Cratch.
Thank you.
All right. More questions. Here's one for you, Sarge. What does Rutgers get from the NCAA tournament and the Big Ten tournament if they win? Are there any financial incentives for the team for winning a game, or is it all in the pool?
That's a good question. I'm going to have to get that's a really good question. I do believe that when you look at the line item, that there is more money that goes to you from the conference. But I could be wrong. But I believe that that is the case. That if they were to just make the NCAA tournament, that they do get a little bit of a bump in their conference distribution.
How will we know? We've never seen that before. So,
well, I believe that there's like the blocks in terms of like it's for the conference. I believe if your teams advance in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
So while Rutgers, like if Rutgers wins their first round game, they won't directly get a check, but the Big Ten will get cut a check, then gets divided up 14 ways, I believe, and then Rutgers obviously gets part of that.
All right, a couple more good ones here. We all know too well the history of Rutgers sports being as unclutch as you can get. So outside of Ashnault, Suriano, has there been a bigger individual effort with as much on the line as Jacob Young's on Saturday?
All sports?
Yeah, anybody. Go ahead.
Yeah, Todd Frazier, 2007.
That's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Big East tournament just was, batted over 500. Just was as hit,
right.
3-4 home runs, and he was unbelievable. One of the best individual performers I've ever seen.
Is there a football one?
Yeah, I'm thinking like maybe
Leonard.
Yeah, I'm thinking Leonard in 2006. Was there a defining game? I don't know. I mean, right, if you're just talking about like one bowl game, Ray Rice, the 200 plus yards in the international bowl, but it was the international bowl. So,
does Ito count? Even though he had a second try at it in that moment?
It's one field goal, though. It's a clutch moment, but is it? Yeah, that's a good question. It's a good question.
No, the best individual performance I've ever seen was it would be two. It was definitely Todd Frazier's number one. Quincy Doobie in the NIT against Iowa State was pretty spectacular as far as one game, and it was the NIT got him to the championship game.
Right. I'm sure we're missing one in women's basketball. There has to be a bunch of those. So send us a text if you can think of one. All right. Here's another question about basketball. Does one or more Rutgers Olympic sports teams currently have a chance to contend for a regular season title in this topsy-turvy spring season? That's a good question.
Yep.
Kratch, what do you got? Who could win a regular season Big Ten title?
I would say that the men's lacrosse team probably looks like the best contender at this point. They're really on a roll, although they're going to, that season is it's going to progress because they're going to play everyone in the Big Ten. My understanding is one time, and then they're going to flip the schedule and do it again. I would say they have the best shot. I mean, look, I think the women at this point, women's basketball team definitely has a great shot. They're with the double bye, they're going to be in that position. Just one thing, Rutgers baseball had a hell of an opening weekend. Going 2-2. Bats broken out, really pitched well against Indiana. I know Sarge is watching those games. He can speak more to it. So I think they showed that they could really potentially have a really strong season. I don't know what that means. The Big Ten being I think the only other one of two leagues in the country that's only playing conference only. Don't know how that's going to translate to an overall win-loss or to an NCAA, regional resume, but they had a really strong start as well.
Yeah, women's soccer, too, will have a chance because they're it's a pretty balanced conference right now, but women's soccer still has enough talent in that program that they'll have an opportunity as well. But men's lacrosse, for sure. I mean, they look like they have the goods right now.
The fact that there's more than one answer to that question is a good sign for Rutgers, certainly. All right, thanks everyone for your questions. We really appreciate it. We've got some more stuff we can dive in here. I wanted to talk football really quick, guys. another big commitment for Greg Schiano, another 6-rated prospect in New Jersey, a guy who's got a bunch of offers, 4-star, Kenny Fletcher. That, just following the trend, that's two 4-stars in a row, I think, Kratch. That's the good news. The bad news is one of their quarterback targets, the number 4 recruit in the state, Stephen Jelly from Bergen Catholic, went to Notre Dame. Kratch, overall, what are your thoughts here on how this recruiting is going? Are good signs, bad signs? And is there still a concern about getting that quarterback?
Yeah, I think that at this point, the quarterback dominoes are starting to fall. And, you've got Braden Davis and Gavin Wimsatt still on the board. But if Rutgers doesn't get either of those kids, you have to kind of wonder, have they struck out on all their top quarterback targets? And do they now have to move into the second tier? And as we've discussed, too many times to count on this podcast, Rutgers has to get a quarterback that can be a multi-year starter, face of the program guy in this 2022 class. They have to do it. And right now, it's not over yet, but guys are starting to come off the board and go elsewhere, and Rutgers still doesn't have one after not getting a scholarship quarterback in a 2021 cycle.
It's still encouraging, though, Sarge, right? I mean, they're getting guys that they weren't getting, and I like the fact that they're jumping on some of these guys early. And I think we both agreed that the getting big people in that program was an enormous thing, and they seem to be doing that.
Absolutely. I agree with Kratch on what his assessment with the quarterback thing. It's not a huge issue at this point, but it has makings to be, because they definitely need a game-changing quarterback in this recruiting class. And look, I mean, recruiting, a lot of people are just going to talk about the high school recruiting, but we've seen now that with the transfer portal, it's just such a different landscape now that teams, not just Rutgers but across the board, are going to be able to kind of get guys on the margins and be able to kind of bolster the recruiting class that way. So I wouldn't be surprised if Rutgers does strike out on the top couple guys, maybe they hit the transfer portal as well.
The one thing I will say about the portal and the quarterbacks is they need to continue to make offensive progress to be able to market themselves more effectively to the top quarterbacks that enter the portal. I don't think they're there yet. And my question would be, if it's almost like a chicken and egg thing, like if they don't get the quarterback that can take that offense to the next level, then how are they going to sell themselves to a guy in the portal? A guy like Jack Cohn, Rutgers was in on him, but when Jack Cohn is looking at Notre Dame and looking at Rutgers, where does he think, and objectively, I think anyone would agree with this, what's going to put him in a better position to be like Mac Jones and be a first-round pick potentially in a year?
The one thing I'd argue, and we're just talking about the grad transfer portal that's all that's existed the last couple of years, but now that the NCAA, the one-time waiver rule, that's going to change everything, because especially at quarterback, where guys who are second and third stringers after a year or two, they're going to get antsy, and you're going to see free agency like never before, especially at the quarterback position, because that's just inevitably, I think there teams like across the board, not just Rutgers. Again, now will Rutgers be able to take advantage of that? I don't know, but I think when you're looking at the quarterback position, overall, you can only have 2 or 3 guys, and I think. I think you're going to see a lot of guys, on the market, and I think we're just going to see a totally different landscape.
I think it's going to be fascinating. We've got the day for the spring game, May 1st. This roster, just to see who's on it, who's not on it, what's going to look like, will be interesting in a lot of different ways. All right, so that's our football segment. Wrestling, Kratch, how was State College? Looks like it was a fun little weekend for you.
Yeah, it was a long day. I don't know. I assume it's because of COVID protocols, but the Big Ten had this great idea of having a 5-hour break in between the first and second sessions on Saturday, and then starting the semifinals at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. So as I tweeted, it was the longest day of wrestling I've ever covered. And, I've been to the Union County tournament, which can go for a long time. So, no, it was, as I mentioned earlier, a very strong weekend for Rutgers. Obviously, disappointed Sebastian Rivera lost a really, great semi-bout to Penn State's Nick Lee. But, I think they're still confident he's a has a real chance to win a national title in St. Louis in a couple weeks. John Poznanski wrestled really well in his first Big Ten tournament. I think Mike Van Brill was the story of the weekend, though, for Rutgers, a kid who, has been a starter at 3 different weights. He's a natural 149 pounder. He went down to 141 a couple of seasons ago when Anthony Ashnall had that season where he was out for injury before he won the national title. He went up to 157 last year, was a national qualifier. Obviously, the tournament didn't happen. Goes down to 149, loses his first round bout. Just gets kind of caught on a big move, and then wins runs the table in the consolation bracket, beats the 2 seed, beats the 3 seed, beats the 5 seed, beats 2 kids that beat him early in the year, finishes third. He's got a great chance now to be a top 8 seed at the national tournament. Just a homegrown Jersey kid who's kind of paid his dues and stuck with the program and has been developed by this Rutgers staff over the past few years. And now he's got a chance to do something really special, potentially in his last tournament at Rutgers.
All right, gents. Excellent. What else do we got? This was a jammed-packed show. I'm not sure we ever had this much to talk about. And I think next week's going to even be more fun. We're going to be sitting here next week. We're going to have a bracket in front of us with Rutgers someplace in that bracket, and we're going to be able to talk about, if they get a good break here, maybe you can like project the way they can get to the Final Four. That's kind of fun. How about that?
Yeah. So I interviewed Pat Hobbs for another story that you'll be seeing soon. And we talked about it too. This is, really the glory days right now at this point of, Rutgers right now with the success that the men's lacrosse team is having. Men's basketball in the NCAA tournament, women's basketball with a legit chance to win the Big Ten tournament. Both basketball programs going to the NCAA tournament. All these schools are playing. You have 19 teams playing this spring. Pat Hobbs did joke that he said that it's hardest on the facilities people and the trainers. But we spent so many months during 2020, lamenting the fact that there was nothing going on. There was no sports. And now all of a sudden, boom, you have so much going on, and Rutgers are actually having some success.
It is really wild. It really is. It's just complete turnaround. And it's more fun, a lot more fun. All right. So on that note, let's sign off for this week. I want to thank everyone for listening. We want to thank New Brunswick Development Corporation, of course, for being our sponsor, to Keith Norton for our great new introduction, and to all of you for listening. We'll be back on next Monday to talk about the NCAA Tournament. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at NJ.com/insider.
You haven't heard enough from me yet, huh? Steve Politi here for one last thank you to this episode's sponsor, New Brunswick Development Corporation, and to listeners like you who make it all the way to the end of the show. We'll see you again soon.